So things are about to get crazy for the Philadelphia Eagles, as during these next few months, we're going to see some massive changes to the Eagles roster in attempts to bounce back from an incredibly disappointing end of this past season. And while many of us expect to see some big changes on defense and free agency, there is also one particular position on offense that's going to be very interesting to watch too, as the Eagles have a massive decision to make at the running back position, with DeAndre Swift set to enter free agency, and they have a lot of different directions that they could go to address it. But recently, we were just given a very interesting update suggesting that the Eagles could go out and actually make a splash move at this position that would surely shock not just Eagles fans, but the entire NFL world. But what is the real likelihood of the Eagles doing something like this, and what is the best and most realistic avenue that the Eagles should take at running back as they enter NFL free agency? Well, we're going to talk about all that in this video today, so that we won't waste any time. Let's get straight into it. So everybody knows that the Eagles offense is stacked in terms of the talent that they have, and that's why this past season was just so disappointing from an offensive standpoint, because despite all the talent that they had, they still struggled mightily at times offensively, and that was especially true later in the season. And while the players were not all free from blame, I think it's safe to say that the main reason for these struggles was coaching. It was the offensive play calling, it was the scheme, and it was just the failure to adjust to things on the fly during games. I mean, what we saw from the Eagles offense this past season was trying to win based off talent alone, while the offense itself did not put players in positions to succeed and lacked creativity. I mean, Nick Sirianni even admitted to this after the conclusion of the season, saying this:
"To me, we got a little bit stale on offense by the end."
Now, due to the staleness that Sirianni mentioned, the Eagles decided to make a big change by firing then offensive coordinator Brian Johnson and bringing in Kellen Moore, who will now have full control of the offense according to Sirianni, and who will bring many new ideas and a lot more creativity. So the Eagles are banking on the notion that Moore is going to come in and turn the Eagles offense around. And while Moore is more known for his passing concepts and ability to get guys open, if we want a full offensive turnaround from the Eagles next year, the running game is going to need to be a big part of that. As in recent memory, when the Eagles offenses have been towards the top of the league, is because they're one of the best rushing teams in the NFL. And this past season, despite the fact that they were still top 10 in rushing, I think we can all agree that there were far too many moments when the Eagles got away from the run game entirely, and that really hurt the offense in those moments. And then on the contrast, there were moments where the offense was struggling and they then decided to commit more to the run game, and that oftentimes really paid off and led to an offensive turnaround. So in knowing how crucial the run game is going to be for the Eagles' offensive success next year, the running back position is obviously then kind of important and something that the Eagles just can't ignore as they enter free agency. Especially since after last year, I think we all know that Kenny Gainwell cannot be the answer as the running back number one, and he's the only running back that's under contract going into 2024. Meanwhile, the RB1 from this past year and DeAndre Swift, who by the way just had a career year, as well as the other guys, are all set to be free agents, so the Eagles are going to have to do something to upgrade that position this offseason. And if you remember back to last offseason, the Eagles are in the exact same position as they are now when it comes to running back. They had their RB1 in Miles Sanders coming off a career year in Philly set to hit free agency, and there was a lot of speculation as to whether the Eagles would want to re-sign him or not, even though it was going to cost them a little bit to do that. Then you had some bigger name options out there for the Eagles with guys like Saquon Barkley as well as Dalvin Cook being linked to the Eagles, and they were also rumored as potential suitors for Derrick Henry in a trade last offseason, specifically with American Ninja Warrior host and former NFL player Akbar Gbaja-Biamila coming out and saying that a trade by the Eagles for Derrick Henry was essentially done. Now obviously this trade didn't happen, and I only mention it because we're going to come back to it a little bit later, and despite the fact that the trade didn't end up happening, he still sounds quite confident that he had a reliable source and that the trade was really going down.
I had a very credible source, and I do believe that I actually messed up this trade because it wasn't supposed to come out.
Oh, really?
And so I didn't realize that A, anybody would be paying attention. B, I didn't think that I wasn't supposed to say it. So I just said, hey, you know what, let me go ahead. You know, I wasn't trying to compete with Ian Rappaport and, and all the other guys. I felt like, to be honest with you, I said, oh, okay, well, I blew this one. This didn't happen the way it was supposed to, but
yes.
I should have taken it down. But in my heart, because the source, and you know the source, you absolutely know the source.
So again, maybe Akbar may not be the go-to source for all your NFL news, but he does share the same agency with Henry, and he seemed very, very confident in his sources that this trade was in fact going to happen. Now obviously it didn't, and the Eagles opted to not re-sign Sanders or go get any of these big names, including Henry, but rather they brought in some free agents for the cheap, and then they made a great trade for DeAndre Swift during the draft, as Swift was entering the last year of his rookie contract, so he wasn't being paid too much, and the Eagles were able to skate through another year paying their running backs next to nothing. But now a year later, they're faced with the same situation, and there's been a lot of speculation suggesting that the Eagles could do things a bit differently this time around. I mean, for starters, there's been a lot of speculation about the Birds potentially bringing back DeAndre Swift, which I and many other Eagles fans would love to do, because Swift showed this year how much of a difference maker he can be when he's given the ball. He had a career year on the ground, rushing for over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career, and his pure raw skill and athleticism and just his ability to make people miss in the open field and create big plays just based on his own talent, it was all on display throughout the entire year. And I think it's clear that Swift turned out to be a great fit with the Eagles and behind that great run blocking offensive line, as again, he had a career year in Philly behind them. And the crazy thing is, the Birds may not have even used him correctly in his 1 year in Philly. Swift is a back with a fantastic dual threat skill set where sure, he's a great runner, but he can also kill you in the pass game. He's a really fantastic route runner out of the backfield, and he showed that during his 3 years in Detroit. But with the Eagles, they never really utilized him in that way. They didn't ever really take advantage of his receiving skill set enough, and DeAndre Swift even admitted this.
I'm the type of guy that whatever I'm getting asked to do, I'm gonna make that my thing. Okay. Throughout the whole year. Yes, I could have been used a little bit more in the pass game, but I don't call the plays.
Right.
So whatever I'm asked to do, I'm going to try to master that. And try to affect the game in that way.
Plus, in addition to them not using his receiving skill set enough, there were also plenty of games where they just didn't give him enough touches, period, even on the ground. I mean, like I said, there were moments throughout the entire season where the Eagles just got away from the run game, and it really hurt them. So, with all that being said, I think it's clear that both, one, the Eagles didn't really utilize Swift correctly this entire year, despite him having a career year, but it's also clear that he has another level that he can reach. He still has so much improving to do, should he be utilized correctly, and I'd love for that to be in Philly. And Swift apparently would too, as he even said in an interview during Super Bowl week that he'd love to be back with the Eagles.
You think we're going to be seeing you in an Eagles uniform next season? Put you on the spot.
Only time would tell. I would love to be an Eagle again. I would love to.
Now, I'm personally kind of hoping that the Birds bring Swift back, but there has been some recent speculation that the Eagles may not do that and instead opt to make a big change to their running back position by acquiring a bona fide star. And one potential guy that they've been linked to recently is Giants star Saquon Barkley, as after being franchise tagged late last offseason by the Giants, Barkley's a free agent once again, and just like last offseason, there have been rumors that he could come to the Eagles, as Bookies.com has listed the Eagles as the team with the second best odds to land Barkley, just behind the Giants. And while I love the idea of Barkley behind the Eagles offensive line, plus in addition to all the other weapons that the Eagles have on offense, I just find it hard to imagine the Eagles shelling out around $12 million per season to a running back to begin with, let alone one who has had some serious injury issues in the past. So I really just don't see Barkley to Philly as a very realistic possibility, despite the rumors linking him to the Eagles and the fact that he'd be coming back to his hometown and it'd give him a better chance to win. The only shot I could really see this happening is if he takes a major discount to come to Philly, and I just doubt that that happens. Now, a bigger name that I see as a bit of a more realistic target in my eyes is Derrick Henry, and that's for multiple reasons. I mean, one, he is a bit older and on the downside of his career, although to be fair, he is still producing at a pretty high level. Two, he's also already been linked to the Eagles in the past, the most notable thing being Akbar Kabaja-Biamila saying that the trade was going to happen last offseason, like I had mentioned earlier. And also, he's been linked to the Eagles again more recently, with them being listed as the team with the second highest odds to land Henry this offseason, just behind the Ravens. And I think that we can all agree that Derrick Henry behind the Eagles offensive line would just be amazing to watch. Plus, it might be possible to get him on just a one-year deal because of the fact that Henry did say at the end of this past season that he's going to be looking for a situation that gives him his best chance to win a Super Bowl. Plus, with him being on the older side, I doubt there's a team that's willing to shell out a multi-year contract that also pays him a lot annually. But that's also the problem, because for a one-year deal, it's still estimated that the Eagles would have to shell out around $10 million, which, to be honest, I really just don't see happening. I do like the idea of Henry on the Eagles, but I just don't really see them paying that price for a running back. Now, maybe he'd take a cheaper deal to come to Philly and try to win, but I'm assuming some other contender might be willing to pay him more and he'll go elsewhere. So I'm not going to rule it out completely, and I think it's more realistic than Barkley signing with the Birds, but I still just don't really see it happening. And what I honestly do think the Eagles are going to do in free agency when it comes to the running back position is, one, either sign a few smaller name guys that complement each other for the cheap and build kind of a running back by committee system in that way. I mean, I'm sure they'll sign at least one smaller name guy for really cheap just to round out the backfield at the bare minimum, or they could go out and bring back DeAndre Swift, which I really would not mind at all. I'd actually love it because I think the guy is a perfect fit in Philly. I already went through everything that he did this year with the team, but Swift is a Philly native, he's still fairly young, and he should have a few solid years left, and according to SpotTrack, his estimated annual value is around $6.7 million per season, which really doesn't sound too bad at all to me. Now, obviously, building a defense is much more important, and I think that the Eagles need to prioritize that and getting other extensions acquisitions done rather than investing that money at running back. And honestly, if you can build a solid backfield with cheap free agent contracts or getting guys that aren't on big contracts just like they did last year, then I'm all for it. But at the same time, if you have the money, I really don't think around $6 million per year for around 2 to 3 years is all that bad, especially for a guy that has proven to be a difference maker for this team. I mean, when he was rolling last year, that almost always meant that the Eagles were rolling offensively, and the guy's just so talented that, like I said, he might have another level to still reach that we just haven't seen yet. So again, I don't think re-signing him would be that bad of a thing. Now, how realistic is it? I don't really know. I'd say it's probably more likely that it doesn't happen rather than it does, because the Eagles just typically don't re-sign running backs to bigger contracts, but Swift is really, really good, and his price tag isn't too high, so I guess we'll see. If the Eagles don't bring him back, then I would imagine that they just sign some guys to cheaper deals in free agency and maybe draft someone, but we obviously don't know for sure. But we're going to have a much better idea of the Eagles' plan at running back once free agency rolls around in March, and we're going to be covering all things related to the Eagles in free agency once that starts up. So if you don't want to miss any of that, make sure you subscribe, and also really importantly, turn on notifications so you don't miss any other Eagles updates just like this. Also, drop a like down below on this video if you did enjoy it and want to show some support, and leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video. And if you want to watch another Eagles video, you can go check out this one right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.